The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists in the middle of a crowded cafe on a Tuesday morning, and the sound cut through the chatter like a gunshot. Coffee cups froze halfway to lips. Conversations died mid-sentence. A woman in scrubs, pale, tired, unremarkable, was being dragged toward the door by a cop twice her size, and no one moved to help. Phones came up instead. Record, don't intervene. That's the world now. But here's what none of them knew. The quiet woman in those cuffs had spent 7 years keeping soldiers alive in combat zones where most people wouldn't last 7 minutes. She'd stitched wounds under mortar fire, made calls that decided who lived and who didn't, and walked out of war zones with commendations most officers would never touch. And now, she was being arrested for sitting in a coffee shop. One cop, one phone call, one massive, career-ending mistake. If you want to see how this story ends, how one moment of prejudice unraveled an entire system, stick with me until the last word. Drop a like, leave a comment with the city you're watching from, and let's see how far this story can travel. Because what happens next? No one saw it coming. The cafe smelled like burnt espresso and cinnamon, the kind of place where people came to look busy without actually working. It was called The Lantern, tucked into a corner of downtown Stonebridge City, where the rent was high and the crowd was higher. Laptops glowed on every table. Conversations hummed in that performative way people talk when they want to be overheard. Claire Whitaker sat alone near the window, a stack of patient files spread in front of her, a half-empty mug of black coffee cooling beside her elbow. She wore plain gray scrubs, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that hadn't been washed in 2 days. She looked exactly like what she was, someone grinding through another shift at Riverbank General Hospital, trying to steal 20 minutes of peace before the chaos started again. She didn't notice the stares at first. She was too focused on a chart, notes about a post-op patient who'd been flagged for complications. Her pen scratched across the margin. Check vitals every 2 hours, monitor for sepsis. Basic stuff, but the kind of basic that saved lives when people paid attention. She flipped the page, took a sip of coffee. It was cold now, bitter in a way that matched the taste of the morning. That's when the manager appeared. He was young, maybe 26, with a name tag that said Brendan, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He stopped at her table, hands clasped in front of him like he was about to deliver bad news at a funeral. "Excuse me, ma'am?" Claire glanced up. "Yeah?" "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." She blinked, set her pen down. "I'm sorry?" "This is a private establishment. We reserve the right to refuse service." Claire looked around the cafe. Every table was full. People were scrolling, typing, talking. No one else was being asked to leave. She looked back at Brendan. "I paid for my coffee. I've been here 20 minutes. What's the problem?" "You're making customers uncomfortable." "I'm sitting here, reading." "Ma'am, I'm not going to argue with you." His voice dropped, taking on that false, polite tone people use when they've already decided you're the problem. "I need you to gather your things and go." Claire felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd felt it before. In different contexts, different countries, different uniforms. The feeling of being assessed and dismissed in the same breath. She kept her voice level. "I'm not doing anything wrong. I've asked you nicely. And I'm telling you, I'm a paying customer. You can't just kick me out because what?" Brendan's smile vanished. "You want to make this a thing? Fine. I'll call the police." Claire didn't move, didn't raise her voice. "Go ahead." He pulled out his phone. Dialed, spoke in low, urgent tones to someone on the other end. Claire heard fragments, refusing to leave, causing a disturbance. Yes, she's still here. She didn't bother packing up her files, didn't grab her coffee. She just sat there, hands folded on the table, watching the room pretend not to watch her. A woman at the next table whispered something to her friend. A guy in a hoodie smirked into his laptop. No one asked what was happening. No one questioned it. 10 minutes later, the door swung open, and Officer Ryan Cole stepped inside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of walk that said he'd done this 1,000 times and expected it to go the same way every time. His uniform was crisp, his expression flat. He scanned the room, spotted Brendan, then followed his finger toward Claire. He crossed the cafe in 6 strides, stopped at her table, and looked down at her like she was something he'd stepped in. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me." Claire didn't move. "For what?" "Trespassing. I paid for my coffee. I'm sitting here quietly. That's not trespassing. The manager asked you to leave. You refused. That's trespassing. That's not how the law works. Ryan's jaw tightened. I'm not here to debate. Stand up. Claire met his eyes. She didn't flinch. You're about to make a serious mistake. Last chance. Stand up or I'll make you stand up. She didn't move. Didn't escalate. Just sat there, calm and still, while the entire cafe held its breath. Ryan reached for her arm. She pulled it back, slowly, deliberately, not aggressive, just refusing to comply. Don't touch me. Ma'am? I said don't touch me. Ryan grabbed her wrist, hard. Claire felt the pressure, the twist, the way he yanked her arm behind her back before she could even react. She didn't fight, didn't scream, but her voice came out sharp and clear. I'm not resisting. You're resisting right now. He forced her other arm back, snapped the cuffs on with practiced efficiency. The metal bit into her skin. Someone gasped. Bones rose like a wave. Claire's face stayed blank, but her pulse hammered in her ears. She'd been restrained before, training exercises, combat scenarios, but this was different. This was public. This was humiliation wrapped in procedure. Ryan hauled her to her feet. Let's go. You're making a mistake, she said again, quieter this time. Yeah, I've heard that before. He marched her toward the door. The crowd parted. No one intervened. No one spoke. Just stares and cameras and the low hum of whispered commentary. As they reached the exit, Claire turned her head, locked eyes with Brendan, who was watching from behind the counter with his arms crossed, and said one cold, clear sentence. You have no idea who you just put in cuffs. Then the door swung shut behind them, and the cafe exploded into noise. The back seat of the patrol car smelled like sweat and industrial cleaner. Claire sat with her hands cuffed behind her, the plastic seat digging into her spine. Ryan drove in silence, his radio crackling with dispatch chatter. She stared out the window, watching Stonebridge City blur past. Traffic lights, storefronts, people walking dogs, living normal lives. She'd been in worse situations, way worse, but this one stung in a way she wasn't ready for. At the precinct, Ryan hauled her out of the car and led her through the back entrance. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air was stale, heavy with old coffee and paperwork. He sat her down in a holding area, a row of plastic chairs bolted to the floor, and told her to wait. Then he disappeared through a door marked processing. Claire waited. 20 minutes. 30. No one spoke to her. No one asked if she needed water, if she was hurt, if she understood what was happening. She was just another body in the system, another problem to be logged and filed and forgotten. She closed her eyes, breathed, focused on the one thing she'd learned in the field. Control what you can. Let go of the rest. Inside the processing room, Ryan filled out the arrest report with practiced indifference. Name, Claire Whitaker. Age, 42. Charge, trespassing, resisting arrest. He didn't think twice about it. Didn't question the manager's story. She'd refused to leave. She'd pulled away when he tried to remove her. Open and shut. He handed the report to Sergeant Linda Voss, a 15-year veteran with sharp eyes and zero patience for nonsense. She scanned the paperwork, frowned, then looked up at him. You arrested her for sitting in a cafe? She was asked to leave. She refused. And the charge is trespassing? And resisting. Did she swing at you? Try to run? She pulled her arm away. Linda stared at him. That's your definition of resisting? Ryan shifted his weight. Look, the manager called it in. I responded. She didn't cooperate. What was I supposed to do? Maybe ask some questions? Linda tossed the report onto her desk. Get me her ID. Let's see who we're dealing with. Ryan retrieved Claire's wallet from evidence, pulled out her driver's license, and handed it over. Linda typed the name into the system, hit enter, waited. The screen loaded. Her expression changed, subtle, but Ryan caught it. A flicker of something that looked a lot like concern. What? He asked. Linda didn't answer right away. She clicked through another screen, then another. Then she picked up her phone and dialed a number Ryan didn't recognize. Someone answered on the second ring. Linda spoke in low, clipped tones. I need you to verify a credential. Whitaker, Claire, military. Yeah, I'll hold. Ryan's stomach dropped. Military? Linda held up a hand, listened. Her face went pale. She set the phone down slowly like it might explode. Where did you arrest her? I told you, a coffee shop. And what exactly was she doing? Sitting there, drinking coffee. Linda stood up. You need to go get Lieutenant Marks right now. What? Why? Because you just arrested a decorated combat medic with active clearance. And if you don't fix this in the next 5 minutes, you're going to spend the rest of your career directing traffic. Ryan's face went white. She didn't say, she didn't have to. You're supposed to do your job. Linda grabbed the file, shoved it into his chest. Go, now. Ryan stumbled out of the room. His hands were shaking. He'd done this 100 times, picked people up, brought them in, processed them, moved on. But this was different. This was bad. 10 minutes later, Lieutenant David Marks stood in the holding area, staring down at Claire Whitaker like she was a live grenade. She looked up at him, calm, tired, and completely unfazed. Ms. Whitaker, he said carefully, I apologize for the confusion. Confusion, Claire repeated. That's what we're calling it? There's been a misunderstanding. I was handcuffed and dragged out of a cafe in front of 50 people because I was drinking coffee. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime. Marks winced. I understand you're upset. Do you? Claire leaned forward. Because I spent 7 years in combat zones keeping people alive. I've pulled shrapnel out of 19-year-olds while mortars landed 50 feet away. I've made decisions in 30 seconds that most people don't make in a lifetime. And today, I got arrested for existing in the wrong place. So yeah, Lieutenant, I'm a little upset. Marks didn't have a response. He unlocked her cuffs. You're free to go. I know I am. Claire stood, rubbing her wrists. But we're not done here. Miss Whitaker, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. She walked out of the precinct into blinding daylight. Her hands were still shaking, not from fear, from rage she'd kept locked down for the last 2 hours. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts, and made a call. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. Whitaker, it's been a while. I need a favor, Claire said. Name it. She told him everything, every detail, every word. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then, give me 24 hours. Thank you. Claire, don't do anything stupid. Too late. She hung up. Stood there on the sidewalk, staring at nothing. People walked past her, oblivious. The city moved on. But something had shifted. Something irreversible. She'd been underestimated before. Ignored. Dismissed. But this was different. This was public, recorded, witnessed by dozens of people who thought she deserved it. And now they were all about to learn exactly who she was. The footage hit the internet 6 hours later. Someone in the cafe had recorded the whole thing, Ryan grabbing her wrist, Claire saying, I'm not resisting, the cuffs snapping shut, the walk of shame through the silent crowd. It was posted to 3 platforms simultaneously. Within an hour, it had 10,000 views. Within 3, it was trending. By midnight, it had 2 million. The comments section exploded. Some people defended the officer. She should have just left. Don't make it harder than it has to be. Others saw it differently. She was sitting there, literally just sitting there. What the hell is wrong with people? But the real fire started when someone dug into her background and found a news article from 6 years ago. Local nurse honored for service in combat zones. There was a photo. Claire in uniform, standing beside a commanding officer, receiving a commendation. The caption read, Whitaker credited with saving over 40 lives during deployment. The narrative shifted overnight. This wasn't just a wrongful arrest. This was a veteran being humiliated for no reason. This was someone who'd served her country being treated like a criminal in her own city. The outrage spread like wildfire. Journalists picked it up. Activists amplified it. By the next morning, Stonebridge City was trending for all the wrong reasons. At Riverbank General Hospital, Claire showed up for her shift like nothing had happened. She clocked in, grabbed her assignment, and started her rounds. But people stared. Coworkers whispered. A resident approached her in the break room, hesitant, like she might shatter. Hey, are you okay? I saw the video. I'm fine, Claire said flatly. That was insane. I can't believe I'm fine, she repeated and walked away. But she wasn't fine. She was furious, and she was done being quiet. That afternoon, her lawyer called. His name was Marcus Hale, a civil rights attorney with a reputation for taking on bad cops and worse systems. "I've reviewed everything," he said. "And Claire? This is a slam dunk." "Good. I'm filing tomorrow. Unlawful arrest, excessive force, violation of civil rights. We're going after the officer, the department, and the city." "How much are we asking for?" $5 million. Claire didn't hesitate. "Do it." The lawsuit was filed the next day. The media picked it up within hours. The city's attorney tried to downplay it. "We're reviewing the incident and will respond appropriately." But the damage was done. The video kept spreading. More angles surfaced. Someone found body cam footage and leaked it. Every frame made it worse. And then, on the third day, something happened that no one expected. 3 black SUVs rolled into the precinct parking lot just before noon. No sirens, no warning. They parked in formation, and 6 men in uniform stepped out. Not local PD, not state troopers. These were federal, military police. They moved with the kind of precision that made everyone in the building stop and stare. Lieutenant Marks met them at the entrance. "Can I help you?" The lead officer handed him a folder. "We're here regarding Claire Whitaker." Marks opened it. His face drained of color. What is this?" "Verification of active clearance. She's still tied to a joint task force. What happened here triggered a review." "A review of what?" "Your department, your procedures, and everyone involved in her arrest." Ryan Cole, standing 15 feet away, felt his legs go numb. He'd thought it was over. Slap on the wrist, maybe a suspension, move on. But this? This was something else entirely. One of the officers looked directly at him. "Officer Cole?" Ryan swallowed. "Yeah. We need to talk." And just like that, everything he thought he knew about his career evaporated. Because Claire Whitaker wasn't just a nurse. She wasn't just a veteran. She was still connected to people who didn't forgive mistakes like this. And now? They were all paying attention. Ryan's throat closed. He tried to speak, managed only a hoarse, "About what?" that sounded pathetic even to his own ears. The officer didn't smile, didn't blink, just gestured toward the conference room with the kind of calm that said he'd done this before and knew exactly how it would end. Inside. Now. Ryan walked. His legs felt disconnected from his body. He could feel every eye in the precinct tracking him, dispatch clerks, fellow officers, even the desk sergeant who usually cracked jokes about everything. No one was joking now. The door closed behind him with a sound like a vault ceiling shut. 3 men in uniform sat on one side of the table. Ryan took the chair opposite, and it felt like sitting in front of a firing squad. The lead officer, his name tag read Garrison, slid a folder across the table. "Do you know what this is?" Ryan opened it. His hands were shaking badly enough that the pages rustled. It was Claire's file, not the one from the arrest report. This was military, official. Page after page of commendations, deployment records, security clearances that went higher than anything Ryan had ever seen. His eyes caught fragments: trauma specialist, forward operating base, classified assignment, active consultation status. He looked up. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask." Garrison leaned forward. "You grabbed a woman with active federal clearance, cuffed her in public, and processed her like a common criminal, without asking a single question. She didn't say she was. She doesn't have to." Garrison's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "That's your job. You're supposed to assess the situation. You're supposed to use judgment. You did neither." Ryan's stomach twisted. The manager said, "The manager is a 26-year-old kid who panicked because he didn't like the way someone looked, and you just took his word for it." Garrison tapped the folder. "Claire Whitaker spent 7 years in combat zones. She's saved more lives than you've written tickets. She's been vetted by 3 separate agencies, and you arrested her for drinking coffee." "I didn't know," Ryan said again, but the words felt hollow. "That's the problem." Garrison stood. "You're suspended, effective immediately. Don't come back to this building until you're told otherwise. And Officer Cole, if I were you, I'd start looking for a new career." They left him sitting there, alone, in a room that suddenly felt too small to breathe in. Ryan stared at the table, at his hands, at the life he'd just watched collapse in 10 minutes. He'd thought he was doing his job, following procedure. The manager called, he responded, The suspect didn't comply. He made the arrest. Clean. Simple. Except it wasn't. And now everyone knew it. Outside, Garrison and his team regrouped in the parking lot. One of the younger officers glanced back at the precinct. Think he gets it? Doesn't matter, Garrison said. He's done. What about the department? That's next. They climbed into the SUVs and drove away, leaving a precinct that had just realized it was under a microscope it couldn't escape. Back at Riverbank General, Claire finished her shift in a haze of controlled fury. She moved through her rounds on autopilot, checking vitals, updating charts, answering questions from patients who had no idea their nurse had been handcuffed 2 days ago. A kid with a broken arm asked her if it would hurt when they took the cast off. She smiled, told him it wouldn't, and watched his mom relax. Small moments, normal moments, the kind of work she'd always done. But today it felt different. Today it felt like proof that she belonged here, in this building, doing this work, and no one had the right to make her feel otherwise. At the end of her shift, she found Marcus Hale waiting in the hospital lobby. He was tall, black, mid-50s, with silver threading through his close-cropped hair and a suit that said he didn't lose cases. He stood when he saw her. "We need to talk." Claire gestured toward the exit. They walked outside into the late afternoon sun, found a bench near the parking lot, and sat. Marcus pulled out his tablet. "The lawsuit is filed. The city knows, and they're scrambling." "Good. Their attorney called me this morning, wanted to know if we'd consider settling." Claire's eyes sharpened. "Already?" "They're terrified. The video's gone viral. The military presence at the precinct got leaked. Every news outlet in the state is covering this. They want it to go away." "How much are they offering?" Marcus hesitated. $2 million. Claire laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. "That's not even half." "I told them that." "What did they say?" "They'll go higher. But they want a non-disclosure agreement. They want you to stay quiet." Claire stared at the parking lot. Cars coming and going. People heading home after long shifts. Normal life continuing while hers was being dissected in courtrooms and comment sections. She shook her head. "No. Claire, I said no. I'm not signing anything that stops me from talking about what happened. They humiliated me in public. They don't get to buy my silence." Marcus studied her. "You know what that means, right? If we take this to trial, it gets messy. They'll dig into your past, your deployments, your medical decisions. They'll try to paint you as someone who overreacted." "Let them try." Claire's voice was ice. "I've got nothing to hide. Do you?" "Not a thing," Marcus grinned. "All right, we go to trial. But I'm asking for $7 million now." "Do it." He stood, tucked the tablet under his arm. "You're tougher than most clients I work with. I've had practice." He left. Claire sat there for another 10 minutes, watching the light fade. She thought about Ryan Cole, about Brendan, about every person in that cafe who'd watched her get dragged out and done nothing. She thought about the SUVs, the federal officers, the way the system had finally started paying attention. It felt good, but it also felt exhausting, because this wasn't over, not even close. The next morning, the Stonebridge City Police Department held a press conference. It was announced with less than 2 hours' notice, which meant the media showed up hungry and skeptical. Lieutenant Marks stood behind a podium in the precinct's briefing room, flanked by the chief of police and the city's attorney. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters filled every seat. Marks cleared his throat and read from a prepared statement. 2 days ago, an incident occurred involving one of our officers and a member of the community. We take all allegations of misconduct seriously. Officer Ryan Cole has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. We are committed to transparency and accountability. A reporter shouted from the back. "Is it true Ms. Whitaker is a decorated combat veteran?" Marks hesitated. "We are aware of her service record." "Did Officer Cole know that when he arrested her?" "The investigation is ongoing." "Was she doing anything illegal?" "The details of the incident are still being reviewed." "She was sitting in a cafe. What's there to review?" Marks didn't answer. The press conference dissolved into shouted questions, none of which were answered with anything resembling honesty. The chief stepped in, thanked everyone for coming, and ended it abruptly. The cameras kept rolling, the reporters kept shouting, and the whole thing played on a loop across every news channel for the rest of the day. Claire watched it from her apartment. She sat on her couch with a mug of tea cooling in her hands, staring at the television as Mark stumbled through non-answers. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just a cold, clear certainty that this was going to get worse before it got better. Her phone buzzed, a text from someone she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Saw the news. "You okay?" She typed back, "I'm fine," another buzz. "You need anything? Call me." She didn't respond. She wasn't fine. But she also wasn't broken, and that was enough. At the precinct, Ryan Cole cleaned out his locker. No one spoke to him. No one looked at him. He was a ghost. A mistake. The guy who'd screwed up so badly that federal officers had to step in. He shoved his spare uniform into a duffel bag, grabbed his coffee mug, and walked out through the back exit. His truck sat in the far corner of the lot, dusty and beaten up, the kind of vehicle that said he'd never made much money and never expected to. He threw the bag in the bed and sat behind the wheel, staring at the steering wheel like it might offer some kind of answer. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't pick up, but something made him answer. "Yeah?" "Officer Cole?" A woman's voice. Crisp. Professional. "Who's this?" "My name is Andrea Wolf. I'm a reporter with the Stonebridge Tribune. I'd love to get your side of the story." Ryan's stomach dropped. "I'm not talking to reporters." "I understand this is difficult, but people are asking questions. Wouldn't you rather control the narrative?" "There's no narrative. I did my job." "Did you?" Her tone shifted just slightly, sharper now. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you arrested a decorated veteran for no reason, and now you're hiding." "I'm not hiding." "Then talk to me." Ryan hung up. His hands were shaking again. He started the truck and drove home, but the whole way he felt like he was being watched, like the world had turned into a courtroom and he was the only one on trial. That night, another video surfaced. This one was from inside the precinct. Someone had leaked body cam footage from the holding area, Ryan leading Claire in, sitting her down, walking away without a word. The audio was clear. You could hear her breathing. You could hear the cuffs clicking. You could hear Ryan tell another officer, just another one who didn't want to cooperate. The footage lasted 90 seconds. It was enough. The comments exploded. "Just another one? She's a war hero. You idiot." This is what systemic prejudice looks like. He didn't even ask her name. The city's attorney called Marcus at midnight. "We need to talk." Marcus, groggy but sharp, said, "I'm listening. 4 million. Final offer. But we need this settled before the trial date." 7. That's insane. That's what happens when you let your officers humiliate veterans on camera. 7 million, no NDA, and a public apology. Or we go to court and I make sure every juror in this city sees that body cam footage on a loop. Silence. Then, "I'll get back to you." "You do that." Marcus hung up, rolled over, and went back to sleep. He'd been doing this long enough to know when he had the upper hand. And right now, he was holding all the cards. The next day, Claire was called into a meeting at the hospital. She walked into the administrator's office expecting routine paperwork. Instead, she found 3 people waiting: the hospital director, the head of HR, and someone she didn't recognize. A man in his 50s with thin-framed glasses and a nervous smile. The director, a woman named Dr. Ellen Frost, gestured to a chair. "Claire, thank you for coming. This is Gerald Hoop from our legal team." Claire sat. "What's this about?" Ellen folded her hands on the desk. "We wanted to check in, see how you're doing." "I'm fine." The incident has gotten a lot of attention. We want to make sure you feel supported." Claire's eyes narrowed. "Supported how?" Gerald cleared his throat. "We're concerned about the optics. The hospital's name has been mentioned in several articles. We want to make sure this doesn't become a distraction." "A distraction?" Claire's voice was flat. "I got arrested for sitting in a cafe, and you're worried about optics?" "That's not what I—" "Yes, it is." Claire stood. "You're worried that my lawsuit makes the hospital look bad. You're worried donors might get nervous. You're not worried about me." Ellen raised a hand. "Claire, that's not fair." "Isn't it?" Claire stepped toward the door. "I've worked here for 6 years. I've never missed a shift. I've never filed a complaint. And the first time something happens to me, you bring in legal? I'm done with this conversation." She walked out. Behind her, Ellen called her name, but Claire didn't stop. She walked straight to the nurse's station, clocked out, and left the building. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from the realization that even the people she thought would stand with her were more worried about their reputation than her dignity. That evening, she got a call from Garrison. "Ms. Whitaker, do you have a minute?" "Depends. Is this official?" "Semi. I wanted to let you know we've completed our review of the arrest. The findings are not good for Officer Cole." "I could have told you that. I'm sure. But now it's documented. The department failed to follow basic protocol. Officer Cole failed to conduct a proper assessment, and the manager's call was based on nothing but prejudice. So what happens now? Officer Cole is being terminated. The department is facing a federal review, and the cafe is dealing with its own fallout." Claire closed her eyes. It wasn't enough. Not yet. "What about accountability? Real accountability? That's what your lawsuit is for. And between you and me, I hope you win." "Thanks. You deserve better than what happened." She hung up, sat on her couch in the dark. Her apartment was small, neat, functional, the kind of place you lived when you didn't spend much time at home. She thought about the deployment she'd never talked about, the one where she'd held a 19-year-old kid together with gauze and pressure while they waited for a medevac that came too late. She thought about the way people looked at her in the cafe, the way Ryan grabbed her wrist, the way the system had worked exactly as it was designed to: protect the powerful, punish the vulnerable, and hope no one noticed. But people had noticed, and now the reckoning was coming. 2 days later, the city caved. Marcus called Claire in the middle of her shift. "They're offering $6.5 million, full public apology, no NDA. They want to settle before this goes to trial." Claire stepped into an empty exam room. "What do you think?" "I think we could get 7 if we push. But I also think you've already won. The officer's fired. The department's under review. The story's everywhere. Settling now means you get paid and you move on with your life. And if we go to trial, we win. But it takes another year, and you spend that year reliving the worst day of your life in front of cameras." Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Take the deal." "You sure?" "Yeah, I'm tired, Marcus. I just want this done." "All right, I'll make the call." The settlement was announced 3 days later, $6.5 million. A formal apology from the city. Termination of Officer Ryan Cole. Mandatory retraining for the entire police department. And Claire Whitaker's name cleared in every headline that mattered. But the story didn't end there. Because 2 hours after the settlement went public, Claire's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. "Ms. Whitaker." A man's voice. Calm, controlled, unfamiliar. "Who is this?" "My name is Victor Lang. I work for a private security firm. We've been following your case." Claire's blood went cold. "Why?" "Because we think you're exactly the kind of person we need, and I'd like to offer you a job." She hung up, stared at the phone. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't rage. It was something else. Something that felt like the ground shifting under her feet. She thought it was over. She thought she could take the money, go back to work, and let the world forget about her. But the world wasn't done with her yet. And neither, it seemed, was she done with the world. Claire stared at her phone for a full minute after the call disconnected. The screen had gone dark, but she could still hear Victor Lang's voice in her head, calm, measured, like he was offering her a cup of coffee, instead of something that felt like a trap. She set the phone on the counter and walked to the window. Outside, Stonebridge City stretched out in all directions, lit up against the evening sky. Somewhere out there, Ryan Cole was probably sitting in his own apartment, wondering how his life had fallen apart. Somewhere else, Brendan was out of a job, learning what it cost to make assumptions. And here she was, standing in her kitchen, holding $6.5 million she hadn't asked for and a job offer she didn't understand. She picked up the phone again, scrolled through her contacts until she found Garrison's number. He answered on the second ring. "Whitaker, what's up?" "Someone just called me. Said his name was Victor Lang, works for a private security firm. You know him?" There was a pause, long enough that Claire's pulse quickened. "Yeah, I know him." "Who is he?" "Lang's ex-military. Runs a contractor outfit that does protective details, logistics support, some consulting work. Legit operation, but they move in circles most people don't see." "Why would he call me?" "Because you just became famous. And people like Lang pay attention to that kind of thing. What did he want? To offer me a job. Garrison exhaled slowly. Did you take it? I hung up. Good. Don't call him back. Why not? Because once you're in that world, you don't get out easy. You've been through enough. Take your settlement. Go back to work. Don't complicate it. Claire leaned against the counter. What if I want complicated? Then you're crazier than I thought. He paused. But it's your life. Just be careful. She thanked him and hung up. Stood there for another minute, thinking. She'd spent the last 7 years of her life being careful. Following orders, doing her job, keeping her head down. And where had it gotten her? Handcuffed in a cafe while people recorded it for entertainment. She was tired of being careful. She was tired of being invisible. And maybe, just maybe, Victor Lang was offering her a chance to be something else. She called him back. He answered immediately like he'd been waiting. Ms. Whitaker, I'm glad you reconsidered. I haven't reconsidered anything. I want to know what you want. Fair enough. Can we meet? There's a cafe downtown, not a cafe, Claire cut in. Understood. How about my office? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I'll send you the address. Fine. He hung up. 30 seconds later, a text came through with an address in the financial district. Claire looked it up. The building was sleek, modern, the kind of place where people made decisions that moved money and shaped outcomes. She set an alarm for 7 a.m. and tried to sleep. She didn't. The next morning, Claire drove downtown in her old sedan. The building was 30 stories of glass and steel, reflective enough that she could see herself in the windows as she approached. She looked tired. She looked older than 42. She looked like someone who'd been through something and wasn't sure if it was over. She rode the elevator to the 24th floor, stepped into a lobby that smelled like leather and money, and gave her name to the receptionist. 2 minutes later, Victor Lang walked out to meet her. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with close-cropped gray hair and the kind of posture that said military even without the uniform. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, and shook her hand with a grip that was firm but not aggressive. Ms. Whitaker, thank you for coming. Call me Claire. Claire, this way. He led her down a hallway lined with photos. Men and women in uniform, desert landscapes, helicopters silhouetted against setting suns. The images were tasteful, professional, and unmistakably designed to convey one thing. We've been there. They reached a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Lang gestured to a chair. Claire sat. He took the seat across from her, not behind the desk. A deliberate choice. No power games. Just two people talking. I'll get straight to it, Lang said. We're expanding our medical division. Right now, most of our contracts involve protective details, logistical support, risk assessment. But we're seeing more demand for embedded medical personnel, people who can operate in high-stress environments, make decisions under pressure, and keep people alive when things go sideways. Claire crossed her arms. And you think I'm a fit? I know you are. I've read your file. Not the sanitized version the hospital keeps. The real one. 7 years in combat zones, trauma specialist. Over 40 confirmed saves in situations where most people would have frozen. You've worked in conditions that would break most doctors, and you did it without hesitation. That was a long time ago. Skills like that don't disappear. You proved that 2 weeks ago. Claire frowned. How did I prove anything? I got arrested. You stayed calm. You didn't escalate. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you let the system hang itself. That takes discipline. That takes control. And that's what we need. What's the job? Protective details. Sometimes domestic, sometimes international. You'd be part of a team, security personnel, logistics coordinators, communication specialists. Your job would be to keep clients alive if something goes wrong. Medical emergencies, trauma injuries, anything that requires immediate intervention. Clients like who? Executives, diplomats, people who work in places where the local infrastructure can't be trusted. Claire leaned back. And if I say no, then you go back to Riverbank General and you spend the rest of your career wondering if you should have said yes. Lang's expression didn't change. I'm not going to pressure you. This isn't for everyone. But I think you're tired of being underestimated. I think you want to do something that matters. And I think you're looking for a reason to walk away from a job that just proved it doesn't value you. Claire didn't answer right away. She looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere down there, people were going about their lives. Working, eating, complaining about traffic, normal problems, normal lives. She'd spent years trying to fit into that normal, and it had never quite worked. Maybe because she wasn't built for normal. Maybe because normal didn't want her. She looked back at Lang. What's the pay? Base salary $200,000. Hazard bonuses depending on assignment. Full benefits. Relocation assistance if needed. When do you need an answer? Take a week. Think it over. But Claire? Don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't wait. She stood, shook his hand. I'll let you know. She walked out of the building into bright morning sunlight and sat in her car for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. $200,000. A chance to do something that actually used her skills. A way out of a hospital that had called her into a legal meeting instead of checking if she was okay. It was tempting. It was also terrifying. Because once she said yes, there was no going back to the life she'd built. And that life, for all its flaws, was hers. She drove to Riverbank General, clocked in, started her shift. But the whole time, she felt like she was walking through someone else's routine. A patient asked her how her day was going. She smiled and said fine. Another asked if she'd been on vacation because he hadn't seen her in a while. She lied and said yes. No one mentioned the video. No one mentioned the lawsuit. It was like it had never happened. And that, more than anything, told her everything she needed to know. At lunch, she sat alone in the break room. Dr. Ellen Frost walked in, saw her, and hesitated. Then she crossed the room and sat down across from Claire. Can we talk? Claire didn't look up from her sandwich. About what? About the meeting. I handled that poorly. Yeah, you did. Ellen winced. I was trying to protect the hospital, but I should have been protecting you. I'm sorry. Claire finally looked at her. Are you sorry, or are you worried I'm going to sue you too? I'm sorry. Ellen's voice was quiet. You've been here 6 years. You're one of the best nurses we have. And I let legal dictate how I treated you. That was wrong. Yeah, it was. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ellen said, Are you leaving? Claire set down her sandwich. I don't know yet. If you do, I wouldn't blame you. Ellen left. Claire finished her lunch, threw the wrapper away, and went back to work. But the question stayed with her for the rest of the shift. Was she leaving? And if she was, what was she walking toward? That evening, she got a text from Marcus. City attorney wants to schedule the formal apology, public statement, press conference. You don't have to attend, but they'd prefer if you did. Thoughts? Claire stared at the message. A press conference, cameras, reporters. The chance to stand in front of the people who'd humiliated her and hear them admit they were wrong. Part of her wanted it. Part of her wanted to watch them squirm. But another part, the part that was exhausted and angry and tired of performing for an audience, just wanted it over. She typed back, Schedule it. I'll be there. The press conference was set for 3 days later. It was held in the city council chambers, a grand room with high ceilings and wood paneling that made everything feel official and suffocating. Claire arrived 15 minutes early, wearing the same gray scrub she'd been arrested in. It was deliberate. She wanted them to see exactly who they'd cuffed. Marcus met her at the door. You ready? Not really. You'll be fine. Just stand there. Let them do the talking. Don't engage with reporters unless you want to. They walked inside. The room was packed. Reporters lined the back wall. Cameras were set up on tripods. City officials sat at a long table at the front, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. The mayor, a middle-aged man named Kenneth Draven, stood at the podium. He cleared his throat. The room went silent. Thank you all for coming. We're here today to address the incident involving Ms. Claire Whitaker and Officer Ryan Cole. After a thorough investigation, we have determined that the arrest was unjustified and conducted improperly. Ms. Whitaker was wrongfully detained, and we deeply regret the harm this caused her. He paused, glanced at Claire, and continued. Officer Cole has been terminated. The Stonebridge Police Department is implementing new training protocols to ensure this does not happen again, and we have reached a settlement with Ms. Whitaker to compensate her for the violation of her rights. On behalf of the city, I offer our sincere apology. The reporters erupted with questions. Draven ignored most of them, gestured for Claire to step forward. She walked to the podium slowly, feeling every eye in the room on her. Someone handed her a microphone. She looked out at the crowd and felt the weight of the moment settle over her like a blanket. This was it. The vindication she'd fought for. The acknowledgement she deserved. "I'm not here to make a speech," Claire said. Her voice was steady, clear. "I'm here because the city asked me to be. They wanted to apologize, and I accepted that apology. Not because it fixes what happened, it doesn't, but because holding on to anger won't change anything either." A reporter shouted from the back, "Do you think Officer Cole should face criminal charges?" Claire looked at him. "I think he already lost his career. That's consequence enough for me. What about the cafe manager?" "He lost his job too. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in accountability." And I got it. Another reporter. "What are you going to do now?" Claire paused. She thought about Lang's offer, about the hospital, about the settlement money sitting in an account she hadn't touched, about the life she'd been living and the life she could have. "I'm going to do what I've always done, keep people alive." She stepped back from the podium. Marcus guided her toward the exit. The reporters kept shouting questions, but she didn't answer. She walked out of the chamber, down the steps, into the parking lot. The sun was bright. The air was cold. She felt lighter than she had in weeks. Marcus stopped beside her car. "That was good. Short, honest, no drama." "I'm done with drama." "So what's next?" Claire looked at him. "I got a job offer, private security firm, medical consultant for protective details." Marcus raised an eyebrows. "That's a hell of a shift." "Yeah." "You taking it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me thinks I'm running away." "From what?" "From proving I can still do this. The normal stuff, the hospital work, the routines." Marcus studied her. "Claire, you don't owe anyone proof. You've already proven more than most people ever will. If you want to take the job, take it. If you want to stay at the hospital, stay. But don't make the decision based on what other people think you should do." She nodded. "Thanks." He left. Claire sat in her car, staring at the steering wheel again. She pulled out her phone, scrolled to Lang's number. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She thought about the explosion at the hospital. No, wait. That hadn't happened yet. That was just a possibility, a fear, a scenario her mind had conjured. She thought about what was real, the settlement, the apology, the choice in front of her. She put the phone down, started the car, drove to Riverbank General. Not because she had a shift, because she needed to see it. The building, the place she'd worked for 6 years. She parked in the lot and sat there, watching people come and go. Doctors, nurses, patients, families, all of them moving through their own crises, their own victories, their own losses. And she'd been part of that. She still could be, but did she want to be? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Heard you're thinking about the offer. If you want to see what we do before deciding, I can arrange a ride-along. No commitment, just observation." VL. Claire stared at the message. A ride-along. A chance to see the work without committing. It was smart. It was also transparent. Lang was giving her a taste, hoping she'd want more. But maybe that was okay. Maybe she needed to see what else was out there before she decided to stay where she was. She typed back, "When?" The response came immediately. "Tomorrow night. I'll send details." Claire put the phone away, looked at the hospital one more time. Then she drove home, made herself dinner, and tried not to think about what tomorrow would bring. She failed. The next evening, a black SUV picked her up outside her apartment. The driver didn't say much, just confirmed her name and started driving. They headed west, out of the city, into industrial areas where warehouses lined the streets and streetlights were sparse. Claire felt a flicker of unease. "Where are we going?" "Training facility. Mr. Lang is running a scenario tonight. Thought you'd want to see it." They pulled into a gated lot. Inside, a sprawling complex of buildings. Some concrete, some prefab, all utilitarian. The SUV stopped near the largest structure. Claire got out. Lang was waiting near the entrance, dressed in tactical gear that looked worn and comfortable. "Claire, thanks for coming." "What is this place?" "We run simulations here. Hostage scenarios, medical emergencies, ambush responses. Keeps the team sharp." He gestured toward the building. "Tonight's scenario, VIP extraction under fire. Medical complications mid-operation. I thought you'd appreciate the realism." They walked inside. The building had been converted into a mock cityscape. Narrow streets, building facades, even fake storefronts. A team of 6 operatives stood near the entrance, checking gear. They looked up as Lang approached. He introduced Claire. "This is Dr. Whitaker. She's observing tonight. Treat her like she's not here." One of the operatives, a woman in her 30s with a scar across her jaw, nodded. "You medical?" "Trauma specialist." "Good. We might need you." Lang led Claire to an observation deck overlooking the simulation area. Below, the operatives moved into position. Lang handed her a headset. "You'll be able to hear everything. If something goes wrong, you can call it out. But otherwise, just watch." The scenario started. Immediately, Claire could see the difference between this and anything she'd experienced in a hospital. The operatives moved with precision, hand signals, coordinated positioning, constant communication. They reached the mock building where the VIP was supposedly held, breached the door, secured the interior. Then the complication hit. One of the operatives went down. Simulated gunshot wound to the leg. Arterial bleed. The team medic moved in, but within seconds it was clear he was overwhelmed. The operative was losing too much blood too fast. The medic called for backup. Lang looked at Claire. "You see the problem? He's using a tourniquet, but he's not cinching it tight enough. And he's wasting time with the pressure dressing. He needs to focus on the bleed first, everything else second. Want to tell him that?" Claire hesitated. Then she pressed the button on the headset. "Medic, tighten that tourniquet until you can't feel a pulse below it. Forget the dressing for now. Stop the bleed." The medic looked up, confused. Then he followed the instruction. The bleeding slowed. Stopped. He secured the tourniquet, reassessed, and moved on to stabilizing the operative. The scenario continued. The team extracted the VIP, got him to the extraction point. Mission complete. Afterward, the team gathered for debrief. The medic approached Claire. "That call saved his life. In a real scenario, I mean. You would have figured it out." "Maybe, but not fast enough." He extended a hand. "Thanks." Lang walked over as the team dispersed. "Impressive. You didn't hesitate." "I've done this before, just in different uniforms." "That's what I'm counting on." He gestured toward the exit. "Come on, let's talk." They walked outside into the cold night air. Lang leaned against the SUV. "So what do you think?" "It's different. More controlled than a combat zone, but the principles are the same." "And?" Claire crossed her arms. "And I'm interested, but I need to know what I'm signing up for. The real version, not the sales pitch." Lang nodded. "Fair. The work is unpredictable. Some assignments are boring, executive protection, standing around while someone gives a speech. Others are intense. Medical emergencies in places where the nearest hospital is hours away. Trauma responses in hostile environments. You'd be on call, travel required, and sometimes you'd be making decisions that save lives or end them. Triage. You can't save everyone. You have to choose who gets resources, who gets evacuated first. It's the same as combat. But some people can't handle making those calls in a corporate context." Claire thought about the deployments, about the 19-year-old she'd held together with gauze, about the decisions she'd made when there were 5 wounded and only room for 3 on the helicopter. She'd hated those moments, but she'd made the calls, and she'd lived with them. "I can handle it," she said. Lang studied her. "I believe you. So here's the deal. I'll give you 1 more week. Think it over. Talk to whoever you need to talk to, and if you decide you want in, we'll start with a probationary contract, 3 months. If it's not a fit, you walk away. No hard feelings. And if it is a fit, then you're part of something bigger than a hospital shift." Claire extended her hand. 1 week. Lang shook it. 1 week. The SUV drove her back to the city. She sat in silence, watching the industrial landscape give way to streetlights and traffic. By the time she reached her apartment, it was nearly midnight. She walked inside, dropped her keys on the counter, and sat on the couch in the dark. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ellen Frost. "Heard you were at the press conference. You did well. If you're ever ready to come back to work, we'd be lucky to have you." Claire stared at the message. "We'd be lucky to have you. Not we need you. Not we value you. Just we'd be lucky." Like she was a lottery ticket, not a person who'd given 6 years of her life to that place. She deleted the message, opened a new one, typed to Lang, "I don't need a week. I'm in." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. 30 seconds later, he replied, "Welcome to the team. I'll send the contract tomorrow." Claire set the phone down, leaned back, closed her eyes. She'd just walked away from the only career she'd known since leaving the military. She'd just committed to something that could get her killed, and she felt more alive than she had in years. 3 days later, she submitted her resignation to Riverbank General. Ellen called her within an hour. "Claire, can we talk about this?" "There's nothing to talk about." "Is this because of the meeting?" "Because I apologized." "It's not about the apology. It's about what the apology meant. You didn't protect me when it mattered, and I'm done working for people who don't." "Where are you going?" "Somewhere that values what I can do." She hung up, packed her locker, said goodbye to the few coworkers who'd actually supported her, walked out of the hospital for the last time. She didn't look back. That night her phone rang. Unknown number, she answered. "Yeah?" "Ms. Whitaker?" A woman's voice, shaky, scared. "Who is this?" "My name is Jennifer Cole. I'm Ryan's wife." Claire's blood went cold. "What do you want?" I wanted to say I'm sorry for what he did. He's not a bad person. He made a mistake. He didn't make a mistake. He made a choice." Claire's voice was ice. "He chose to grab me. He chose to ignore every sign that he was wrong. And now he's dealing with the consequences. That's not my problem. He's not doing well. He can't find work. He's drinking. I'm scared he's going to—" "Stop." Claire cut her off. "I'm not responsible for what he does. He's an adult. He made his choices. Whatever happens next is on him, not me." She hung up, sat there, breathing hard. Part of her felt guilty. Part of her didn't. Ryan Cole had humiliated her. He'd treated her like she was nothing. And now his life was falling apart, and his wife wanted Claire to feel sorry for him. She didn't. 2 days later, Claire reported for her first assignment. It was domestic, executive protection for a tech CEO visiting Stonebridge for a conference. Boring work. Standing around in a suit, watching for threats that never materialized. But she was good at it. And at the end of the day, Lang pulled her aside. "You're a natural. I knew you would be. It's not that different from triage. Assess, prioritize, act." "Exactly." He handed her a folder. "Next assignment. International. We're providing security for a delegation in Jakarta. Medical personnel required. 2 weeks. You interested?" Claire opened the folder, read the details. High-risk environment, political instability, potential for violence. Everything she'd walked away from when she left the military. Everything she'd thought she was done with. She looked at Lang. "When do we leave?" "Friday." She closed the folder. "I'll be ready." And she was. But what Claire didn't know, what no one knew, was that Ryan Cole had been watching her, tracking her movements, following her career shift. And in his small, dark apartment, he sat with a bottle of whiskey and a loaded gun, staring at the screen of his laptop, at photos of Claire, at articles about her settlement, at the life she was building while his crumbled. He'd lost everything because of her. And now he was going to make sure she understood what that felt like. He picked up the gun, checked the clip, set it down on the table, and started making plans. The gun sat on Ryan Cole's table for 3 days before he touched it again. He'd bought it years ago, back when he thought being a cop meant protecting people, back when the weight of a firearm felt like responsibility instead of temptation. Now it just felt like the only option left. He picked it up on Thursday night, checked the safety, and set it back down. Not yet. Not until he had a plan. Not until he knew exactly how to make Claire Whitaker understand what she'd done to him. He'd been following her online. Not hard to do. Her new employer had a website, press releases about their contracts, photos of their team at various events. Claire wasn't in most of them, but he'd found one. A group shot from some corporate security conference, her face half hidden behind a taller operative, but unmistakably her. She looked different. Not scared, not apologetic, just focused. Like she'd moved on. Like she'd taken everything from him and walked away without looking back. His phone rang. "Jennifer." He let it go to voicemail. She'd been calling every day since she'd talked to Claire, trying to get him to see someone, talk to someone, do something other than sit in the dark and drink. But what was the point? He'd lost his badge, lost his career, lost his reputation. The Stonebridge Police Department had made it clear he'd never work in law enforcement again. And every time he applied for private security, campus safety, even mall cop positions, they ran his name and came back with the same answer: "We'll pass." Claire Whitaker had destroyed him, and no one seemed to care. He opened his laptop, typed her name into a search engine. The results were endless. Articles about the settlement, op-eds about police reform, think pieces about systemic prejudice. And buried in the middle of page 3, a small notice: Lang Security Solutions expands international operations. He clicked it. The article mentioned Jakarta, a 2-week contract, departure date, Friday. Ryan stared at the screen. Friday. Tomorrow. She'd be out of the country for 2 weeks, unreachable, protected by a team of professionals who'd see him coming from a mile away. He couldn't touch her there, but he could touch what she'd left behind. He pulled up her address. Found it in a public records database. Stupid easy, the kind of thing he used to lecture people about. She lived in a modest apartment complex on the east side of the city. Ground floor, single entry point. No security cameras that he could see from street view. He zoomed in, studied the layout, the parking lot, the exits. He closed the laptop, picked up the gun. This time he didn't put it down. At 6 a.m. Friday morning, Claire stood in her apartment staring at the open suitcase on her bed. 2 weeks' worth of clothes. Medical kit, tactical gear, passport. She'd packed and repacked 3 times, a nervous habit left over from deployments where forgetting one item could mean the difference between life and death. She zipped the case shut, checked her phone. The car would be here in 20 minutes. She walked to the kitchen, made coffee she didn't have time to drink, and stood at the window watching the sunrise. Jakarta. High-risk environment, political instability. Exactly the kind of work she'd told herself she was done with, except she wasn't done. She'd just been waiting for the right reason to go back, and Lang had given her one. A team that respected her skills, a paycheck that matched her value, and a purpose that didn't involve begging for recognition from people who'd already decided she didn't matter. Her phone buzzed. Text from Lang. Car's outside. Ready? She grabbed her suitcase, locked the door behind her, and walked out into the cool morning air. The black SUV idled in the parking lot. Lang sat in the passenger seat. He rolled down the window. "You look ready." "I am." She climbed into the back. 2 other operatives were already there. Jackson, the medic from the training scenario, and Renee, the woman with the scar. Renee nodded at her. "First International?" "In this context, yeah. You'll do fine. Just remember, over there, we're guests. We don't escalate. We protect and extract. That's it." Claire nodded. The SUV pulled out of the lot and headed toward the airport. She looked out the window at Stonebridge City passing by, the streets she'd driven 1,000 times, the hospital she'd worked at for 6 years, the cafe where everything had started. It all felt distant now, like it had happened to someone else. At the airport, they moved through security with the kind of efficiency that came from doing it 100 times. Checked bags, boarding passes, gate assignments. Claire found herself sitting between Jackson and Renee on the plane, listening to them trade stories about past assignments. Malaysia, Colombia, Istanbul. Places she'd only read about. Places where the work was real and the consequences were immediate. Jackson looked at her. "You nervous?" "A little." "Good. Means you're paying attention. The ones who aren't nervous are the ones who get people killed." The flight was 14 hours. Claire slept in bursts, woke to turbulence, slept again. When they landed in Jakarta, the heat hit her like a wall. Humid, oppressive. The kind of heat that made you sweat just standing still. They moved through customs, collected their gear, and loaded into another SUV. This one was armored, reinforced doors, bulletproof glass. Lang sat up front again, reviewing the briefing on a tablet. "Delegation arrives tomorrow," he said without looking up. 4 executives, tech sector. They're meeting with local government officials about a data center project. Our job is to keep them alive while they do it. "What's the threat level?" Claire asked. "Moderate. No specific credible threats. But the political situation is unstable. Protests, occasional violence. We're here in case something goes wrong." They drove to a hotel in the business district. High-rise. Western chain. The kind of place that catered to people who wanted to visit a foreign country without actually experiencing it. Claire's room was on the 12th floor, clean and anonymous. She unpacked, showered, and tried to sleep. She couldn't. The time zone shift had her wired. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Ryan Cole. She'd seen the look in his eyes when the federal officers walked into the precinct, the realization that his life was over. Part of her had felt satisfaction, part of her had felt nothing. And part of her, a small, quiet part she didn't like to acknowledge, had felt something that might have been pity. But she'd pushed it down. Ryan had made his choices. She'd made hers. And now they were both living with the consequences. Her phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Saw the news about your new job. Congrats. Stay safe. She typed back. Thanks. Will do. Another buzz. This one from an unknown number. You think you won. You didn't. RC. Claire sat up, stared at the message. Her pulse hammered. She screenshot it, sent it to Lang with a single word. Problem. He called immediately. Who's RC? Ryan Cole, the officer who arrested me. How did he get your number? I don't know, but I'm in Jakarta. He's in Stonebridge. What's he going to do? I'll make some calls, but Claire, don't ignore this. Guys like him, when they lose everything, they get desperate. And desperate people do stupid things. You think he'd try something? I think you should assume he might. Lang hung up. Claire sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone. She thought about calling the police. But what would she say? He sent me a text? That wasn't a crime. It wasn't even a threat. Just a statement. Vague, deniable. The kind of thing that meant everything and nothing. She pulled up the message again. Read it 3 times. You think you won. You didn't. What did that mean? Was he planning something? Or was he just lashing out, trying to scare her from a distance? She didn't know. And not knowing was worse than any specific threat. She forwarded the message to Marcus with a note. Got this tonight. From Ryan Cole. Thought you should know. His response came fast. I'll file a report with the police. Harassment. Possible stalking. If he contacts you again, don't respond. Document everything. Claire set the phone down. Tried to sleep again. Failed again. At 3 a.m., she gave up, got dressed, and went down to the hotel gym. Ran on the treadmill until her legs burned and her lungs screamed. Lifted weights until her arms shook. Anything to burn off the adrenaline. By the time she got back to her room, the sun was rising and her phone was buzzing with messages from the team. Briefing in 1 hour. The delegation arrived that afternoon. 4 men in their 40s and 50s, all wearing suits that cost more than Claire's monthly rent. They moved through the hotel lobby with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about their own safety. That was someone else's job. Lang's team surrounded them in a loose formation, close enough to respond, far enough to let them breathe. Claire stayed near the rear, medical kit slung over her shoulder, eyes scanning for problems. The meetings were held in a government building downtown. Heavy security, metal detectors, armed guards. The team set up a perimeter outside while the executives went inside. Claire stood near the SUV, watching the street. Crowds moved past. Vendors sold food from carts. A group of protesters marched by, chanting slogans she didn't understand. Renee stood beside her. First time seeing this kind of work up close? Yeah, 90% boredom, 9% adrenaline, 1% pure chaos. What about the other 1%? Renee smiled. That's when people like you earn their paycheck. The first 3 days passed without incident. Meetings, dinners, more meetings. Claire spent most of her time standing around, watching, waiting. On the 4th day, the executives attended a public event, a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new tech hub. Bigger crowd, more exposure, higher risk. Lang pulled the team together before they left the hotel. We're in the open today. Eyes up, comm checks every 10 minutes. If something feels wrong, call it. They arrived at the venue, a plaza surrounded by office buildings, stage set up in the center. Hundreds of people gathered to watch. The team spread out, each operative covering a different sector. Claire positioned herself near the stage exit, medical kit at her feet. She scanned the crowd, faces, hands, body language, looking for anything that didn't fit. 20 minutes into the ceremony, she saw him, a man in the crowd. Mid-30s, jeans and a t-shirt. Nothing unusual except the way he was moving, pushing through the crowd, not watching the stage, watching the executives. His right hand was inside his jacket. Claire keyed her radio. Possible threat? 3 o'clock from the stage. Male, 30s, dark jacket, right hand concealed. Lang's voice came back immediately. Eyes on. Jackson, Renee, converge. The man kept moving, closer to the stage. His hand shifted inside the jacket. Claire saw the outline. Not a gun. Too bulky. She moved toward him, weaving through the crowd. Jackson appeared from the left, Renee from the right. The man reached the stage barrier, pulled his hand out. It was a camera. He started taking photos. Just a journalist, or a tourist, or someone who wanted a better angle. Jackson grabbed him anyway, pulled him back, checked his credentials. Press badge, legitimate. He let him go. The man looked annoyed but didn't argue. Claire exhaled. False alarm. But her heart was still pounding. Lang's voice crackled in her ear. Good call. Better safe than sorry. The ceremony ended without incident. The team loaded the executives back into the SUVs and returned to the hotel. That night, Lang pulled Claire aside. You've got good instincts. Most people freeze when they see something off. You moved. Training. It's more than that. You've got the right wiring for this work. Claire didn't respond. She went back to her room, showered, and checked her phone. Another message from the unknown number. Enjoying your trip? I'm enjoying your apartment. Her blood turned to ice. She called Lang immediately. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? He's in my apartment. Ryan Cole. He just sent me a message. How do you know he's there? He said so. He's in my apartment. Lang was silent for a moment. Then, I'm making a call. Stay on the line. Claire paced the room, phone pressed to her ear. She could hear Lang talking to someone else, his voice low and urgent. Then he came back. I'm contacting local PD in Stonebridge. They'll send someone to check it out. But Claire, even if he's there, even if he's inside, they might not be able to do anything. Breaking and entering is hard to prove if there's no damage and no witnesses. He's threatening me. He's towing the line. That's what makes it dangerous. He's smart enough to stay just this side of legal. So what do I do? You finish the assignment, you come home, and you let me handle this. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to get on a plane immediately, but she knew Lang was right. Running home wouldn't fix anything. It would just give Ryan exactly what he wanted. Proof that he could still control her. She hung up, sat on the bed, stared at the message. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. Ryan had taken everything she'd built and turned it into a target, and now he was inside her home, touching her things, proving he could get to her whenever he wanted. Her phone rang. Marcus. Claire, I just heard. The police are at your apartment. Door was unlocked. No signs of forced entry, nothing stolen, but there's evidence someone was inside. What kind of evidence? Photos. He left photos on your kitchen table. Pictures of you, from the cafe, from the hospital, from outside your apartment. Claire closed her eyes. He's been following me. For weeks, it looks like. Claire, this is stalking. This is criminal. I'm filing a restraining order first thing tomorrow, and I'm pushing the DA to press charges. Will it work? It should, but restraining orders are just paper. They don't stop someone who's determined. So what do I do? You stay where you are. You let the professionals handle it. And when you come home, you don't go back to that apartment. You stay somewhere he can't find you. Claire hung up, lay back on the bed, stared at the ceiling. She'd thought it was over. She'd thought winning the lawsuit meant moving on. But Ryan hadn't moved on. He'd just been waiting, watching, planning, and now he was making his move. The next morning, Claire went through the motions. Briefing, security detail, another day of standing around watching executives shake hands and sign documents. But her mind was somewhere else. In Stonebridge. In her apartment. Imagining Ryan walking through her rooms, looking at her things, leaving his mark. That night, Lang called her into his room. He had his laptop open, a secure video feed on the screen. I pulled some strings, got access to the police report from your apartment. He turned the screen toward her. Photos filled the display. Her kitchen table, her bedroom, her bathroom. And on every surface, pictures of her. Dozens of them. Some from the cafe, some from outside the hospital, some from her morning runs. Ryan had been following her for weeks, maybe months. Building a file, building a case, building an obsession. Lang closed the laptop. He's dangerous, Claire, not just unstable, Dangerous. I know. When we get back, you're not going home. You're staying at a secure location until this is resolved. For how long? As long as it takes. The rest of the Jakarta assignment passed in a blur. Claire went through the motions, but her focus was gone. Every time her phone buzzed, she expected another message from Ryan. Every time she scanned a crowd, she expected to see his face. By the time they boarded the plane back to Stonebridge, she was exhausted. Not physically, mentally. The constant vigilance, the constant threat, it was wearing her down. They landed late at night. Lang drove her straight to a hotel downtown. Different from her apartment, different from anywhere Ryan would think to look. You'll stay here until the restraining order is served and we can assess the threat level. Don't leave without letting me know. Don't go anywhere alone. Claire nodded, went up to her room, dropped her bag on the floor, sat on the bed. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Welcome home. She threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. She buried her face in her hands, breathed, counted to 10. Then she picked up the phone, screenshot the message, and sent it to Marcus and Lang. Marcus called immediately. That's it. I'm going to the DA tomorrow. This is witness intimidation, stalking, criminal harassment. He's done. You said that before. This time I mean it. But Claire didn't believe him, because restraining orders and criminal charges didn't stop someone who'd already lost everything. They didn't stop someone who had nothing left to lose. 2 days later, the restraining order was served. Ryan Cole was forbidden from contacting Claire, from coming within 500 feet of her, from entering her apartment complex. The order was delivered by a sheriff's deputy who found Ryan sitting on his couch, unshaven, surrounded by empty bottles. Ryan signed the paperwork without reading it. Didn't argue. Didn't protest. Just signed and closed the door. The deputy filed his report. Subject was compliant. No indication of immediate threat. We'll monitor. But what the deputy didn't see was the notebook on Ryan's kitchen table. Pages filled with addresses, schedules, routes, everything Claire did, everywhere she went. And on the last page, written in careful block letters, they can't protect her forever. 3 days after the restraining order, Claire was cleared to return to her apartment. Lang sent 2 operatives with her. They swept the place, checked locks, installed new cameras, changed the entry codes, made it as secure as they could. Claire walked through her rooms, looking at everything with new eyes. Her bed, her kitchen, her bathroom. Ryan had been here, touched her things, violated her space. She wanted to burn it all down and start over. Instead, she packed 2 suitcases, everything she couldn't replace. She wasn't coming back here. Lang had arranged a temporary apartment in a secured building, doorman, cameras, controlled access. She'd live there until this was over, however long that took. She loaded the suitcases into her car, drove to the new apartment, unpacked in silence. The place was nice, modern, clean, impersonal. It didn't feel like home, but it felt safe. And right now, safe was enough. That night, her phone rang. Garrison. Claire, we need to talk. About what? Ryan Cole. We've been monitoring him since the restraining order was served. He's not complying. What do you mean? He's been driving past your old apartment multiple times a day. He's been sitting outside Riverbank General, watching, waiting. He's not trying to hide it. So arrest him. For what? Driving on a public street. There's no law against that, unless he violates the restraining order. Actually comes within 500 feet of you, we can't touch him. Claire felt something cold settle in her chest. So you're telling me he can stalk me and you can't do anything about it? I'm telling you the law has limits, and Ryan knows what those limits are. Then what's the point of the restraining order? It gives us a tool. If he crosses the line, we can act. But until he does, our hands are tied. Claire hung up, stared at the wall. She'd won the lawsuit. She'd gotten the apology. She'd gotten the money, and none of it mattered. Because Ryan Cole was still out there, still watching, still waiting for his chance. She called Lang. I need a gun. Claire, I need a gun. I know how to use one. I'm licensed, and I'm not going to sit here waiting for him to make his move. Lang was quiet for a long moment, then, I'll make it happen. But Claire, if you pull that gun, you better be ready to use it, because once you do, there's no going back. I'm ready. 2 days later, Lang delivered a compact 9mm. He showed her how to load it, how to rack the slide, how to aim and fire. She already knew. She'd qualified with firearms in the military, But she listened anyway, watched his hands, memorized the weight, the balance, the cold certainty of metal and mechanics. "Keep it on you," Lang said. "Always. And if you see Ryan, you call me first. You don't engage, you don't confront, you call me." Claire nodded, but she didn't believe him, because if Ryan came for her, there wouldn't be time to call. There would only be time to act. And she was done being the victim. The next morning, she went for a run. Early, 6 a.m. The streets were empty. She ran her usual route, 4 miles, loop around the park, back to the apartment. She'd done it 100 times. She knew every turn, every block, every alley. She didn't see Ryan until it was too late. He stepped out from behind a parked car at the 2-mile mark, just standing there, watching her. She stopped running, reached for her phone. He didn't move, didn't speak. Just stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on hers. "You're violating the restraining order," Claire said. Her voice was steady. Her hand was on the phone. "I'm on a public street," Ryan said, 500 feet away. Measured it myself. Claire looked around. He was right. He was standing exactly at the edge of the restricted zone, close enough to be seen, far enough to avoid arrest. Smart. Calculated. Exactly the kind of thing someone who knew the law would do. "What do you want?" Claire asked. "I want you to know what it feels like." Ryan's voice was flat, empty. "To lose everything. To have people look at you like you're nothing. To know that no matter what you do, you'll never get it back. You did that to yourself." "No. You did it to me. You could have just left. You could have walked away. But you had to make it public. You had to ruin me." "I didn't ruin you. I held you accountable." Ryan laughed. It was a harsh, brittle sound. Accountable. That's a nice word. Makes it sound like you were doing the right thing, but you weren't. You were getting revenge, and now I'm returning the favor. He turned and walked away. Disappeared around a corner. Claire stood there, breathing hard, phone in her hand. She called Lang. He answered immediately. "What happened?" "He was waiting for me during my run, 500 feet away." "Exactly." "Where are you now?" "Still on the street." "He's gone." "Get back to the apartment. I'm sending someone to pick you up." Claire ran back, fast. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. She didn't care. She just wanted to be inside. Behind locked doors. Behind cameras and security and something that felt like safety. When she reached the building, one of Lang's operatives was already waiting. He drove her to Lang's office. Lang was on the phone when she arrived. He hung up when he saw her. "We've got a problem," he said. "I know." "No, a bigger problem. I just got off the phone with Garrison. Ryan Cole's wife filed a missing persons report this morning. He didn't come home last night. His car's gone. His phone's off. And there's a receipt on his kitchen counter from a storage facility. He rented a unit 2 days ago." Claire felt her stomach drop. "What was in it?" "They don't know yet. They're getting a warrant. But Claire, people don't rent storage units in the middle of a restraining order for good reasons. You think he's planning something?" "I think he's already planned it, and now he's executing." Claire's phone buzzed. Another message. "You wanted justice. I'm giving you justice. See you soon." She showed it to Lang. His face went pale. "We need to get you out of the city, now." "And go where?" "Anywhere. Safe house, different state." "I don't care." "But you can't stay here." "I'm not running." "Claire, this isn't about pride. This is about survival. Ryan's gone off the grid. He's got resources. He's got training. And he's got nothing to lose. You stay here, you're a target." Claire looked at him, at the fear in his eyes, at the certainty that this was about to get worse. And for the first time since the cafe, she felt genuinely scared, not of what Ryan might do, but of what she might have to do to stop him. "All right," she said. "Where are we going?" "I've got a place upstate, isolated, secure. We'll move you tonight." But before Lang could make another call, his phone rang. He answered, listened. His expression changed. "When? How many?" He hung up. Looked at Claire. "The storage unit. Police just opened it. It was full of weapons, rifles, ammunition, body armor, and maps. Dozens of maps. Of this building, your old apartment, the hospital, everywhere you've been in the last month." Claire's hands went numb. "He's been planning this for weeks. Longer. And Claire, there was something else in the unit, a manifesto, typed, 20 pages, about how you destroyed his life, how the system protected you, how he's going to make it right. Make what right? Lang didn't answer right away. Then, he's going to kill you, and he's going to make sure everyone watches. The room went silent. Claire stood there, processing. Ryan wasn't just dangerous, he was organized, methodical. He'd been building toward this moment since the day he lost his badge, and now he was ready. How long do we have? Claire asked. I don't know. He could be watching us right now. He could be waiting for the right moment, or he could already be on his way. Claire looked at Lang, at the man who'd given her a second chance, at the job that had made her feel valued again, at the life she'd started building after everything fell apart, and she made a decision. I'm not running, she said again, but I'm not waiting either. We find him first. Claire, that's not... I spent 7 years in combat zones. I've dealt with worse than Ryan Cole, and I'm done letting him dictate my life. We find him. We end this. Tonight. Lang stared at her, then slowly he nodded. All right, but we do it my way, with my team, and if this goes sideways, you follow orders. Deal? Deal. Lang made 3 calls. Within 30 minutes, the full team was assembled. Jackson, Renee, Bashi, 4 other operatives Claire had never met. They gathered in Lang's office, and he laid out the plan. Track Ryan's phone, monitor his known associates, set up surveillance on locations he'd mapped, create a net and tighten it until he had nowhere left to run. But as they prepared to move out, Claire's phone rang one more time. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Hello, Claire. Ryan's voice, calm, almost friendly. Where are you? Close. Closer than you think. I just wanted to call and say thank you. For what? For giving me a purpose again. I've spent the last few months feeling like nothing, like I didn't matter. But now I matter, because you're scared, and that makes all of this worth it. You're not going to win this. Ryan laughed. I already have. Because no matter what happens next, you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering if I'm out there, wondering if today's the day. That's my justice, Claire. That's what you owe me. He hung up. Claire stood there, phone in her hand, and realized with absolute certainty that Ryan Cole wasn't planning to kill her. He was planning to make her kill him. And when she did, everyone would see her as the monster he'd always claimed she was. Claire stared at the phone in her hand, Ryan's words still echoing in her head. He was planning to make her kill him, turn her into exactly what he'd always claimed she was. Violent, dangerous, the real threat. And the worst part? It might work. Self-defense or not, the optics would be brutal. Decorated veteran shoots unstable ex-cop. The headlines would write themselves. Lang was watching her. What did he say? He wants me to pull the trigger. Claire set the phone down slowly. He's going to force a confrontation, and when I defend myself, he gets to be the victim. Jackson stepped forward. Then we don't give him that chance. We find him first, neutralize the threat before he gets close. He's too smart for that, Claire said. He knows how security works. He'll wait until I'm exposed, somewhere public, somewhere with cameras. Renee crossed her arms. So we don't let you get exposed. You stay here. We handle this. That's not how this works. Claire looked around the room at Lang's team. Good people, trained professionals, but this wasn't their fight. He's fixated on me. If I hide, he'll just wait. Or worse, he'll go after someone else to draw me out. Lang's jaw tightened. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop reacting and start controlling the situation. We pick the location. We set the terms. And we end this on our timeline, not his. The room went quiet. Lang studied her face, looking for doubt, for fear, for anything that said she wasn't thinking clearly. He didn't find it. You want to bait him. I want to finish this. Claire, I'm done running. I'm done being scared, and I'm done letting him control my life. Her voice was steel. So we're going to give him exactly what he wants. Me. Out in the open. But on our terms. Lang looked at his team. Jackson nodded slowly. Renee's expression was unreadable, but she didn't object. The other operatives exchanged glances. Then Lang turned back to Claire. All right. But we do it smart. Controlled environment, full surveillance, and the second he makes a move, we shut it down. No heroics, no solo operations. Understood? Understood. Lang pulled up a map on his tablet. Where? Claire thought for a moment. Somewhere public but controllable. Somewhere with clear sight lines and multiple exit points. Somewhere Ryan would feel confident enough to show himself. The waterfront. Near the old pier. Open space. Lots of visibility. Easy for him to position himself. Easy for us to cover. When? Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. I'll go for my run. Same route I always take. He's been watching me for weeks. He knows my patterns. He'll expect it. Lang shook his head. Too risky. He could be anywhere along that route. That's the point. We control the route. We set up overwatch positions. We track him the moment he shows up. And we take him down before he gets within 100 feet of me. Jackson leaned over the tablet. We'd need at least 6 positions. Rooftops, street level, mobile units, and someone on Claire at all times. I'll take point, Renee said. Stay within 50 feet. Plain clothes. He won't see me coming. Lang studied the map. Ran through scenarios in his head. It was risky. It was aggressive. It was exactly the kind of operation that could go sideways in a dozen different ways. But it was also the only way to end this without waiting for Ryan to make the first move. All right, he said finally. We do it tomorrow. But Claire, if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you abort. You don't engage. You don't try to be a hero. You get to cover and you let us handle it. Deal? Deal. The team spent the next 6 hours planning. They mapped every building along Claire's running route, identified overwatch positions, assigned sectors, ran through contingencies. What if Ryan had a rifle? What if he had explosives? What if he wasn't alone? Each scenario was gamed out, each response calibrated. By midnight, they had a plan. By 2 a.m., they had 3 backup plans. By 4 a.m., everyone was too wired to sleep. Claire sat in Lang's office, staring at the city lights through the window. She was wearing her running gear, gray shorts, black tank top, her hair pulled back. The gun Lang had given her was holstered at the small of her back, hidden under a light jacket. She'd checked it 3 times. Loaded, safety off. Ready. Lang appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one. You don't have to do this. Yeah, I do. Why? You've already won. The settlement, the apology, the new career, you've got everything you fought for. Claire took a sip. The coffee was bitter and perfect. I've got everything except peace. As long as Ryan's out there, I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm checking my phone. I'm waiting for the next message, the next threat, the next time he shows up exactly 500 feet away, just to remind me he can. That's not winning. That's surviving. And I'm done surviving. Lang sat across from her. You know there's a chance this doesn't end the way we want it to. I know. You know he might actually try to kill you. I know that too. And you're okay with that? Claire looked at him. I spent 7 years in places where people actually tried to kill me. Every day. I learned how to deal with it then. I can deal with it now. This is different. This is personal. Everything's personal when someone's trying to end you. Claire set down her coffee. But the difference now is I'm not alone. I've got you. I've got your team. And I've got 6.5 million reasons to make sure I walk away from this. Lang smiled slightly. You're tougher than most people I've worked with. I had good practice. At 5:30 a.m., the team moved into position. Jackson and 2 other operatives took rooftop positions along the waterfront. Renee positioned herself at street level, dressed like a jogger, earbuds in, eyes sharp. Lang set up a mobile command post in an unmarked van 2 blocks away, and Claire stood at the entrance to her building, stretching, breathing, preparing. She keyed her radio. Comm check. Overwatch 1, clear, Jackson's voice. Overwatch 2, clear. Street level, clear, Renee. Command, clear, Lang. All positions green. Claire, you're good to move. Claire started running. Her pace was steady, controlled. She followed her usual route, east toward the waterfront, then south along the pier, then a loop back toward the city. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The streets were empty. The city was still asleep. It was peaceful, almost beautiful. Her radio crackled. Command to all units. We've got movement. Black sedan, 2 blocks east of your position, Claire. Matches the description of Ryan's vehicle. Claire kept running, didn't change her pace, didn't look around. Copy that. Vehicle stopped. Driver exiting. Confirmed visual. It's Ryan Cole. Claire's heart rate spiked. Not from the running, from the adrenaline, from the knowledge that everything they'd planned was about to happen. "Where is he?" she asked, moving on foot, heading toward the waterfront. "He's got something in his hand, can't confirm what it is." "Overwatch 1, do you have a visual?" "Negative, buildings blocking line of sight." "Overwatch 2? "I've got him. He's carrying a bag, moving toward the pier." Claire turned the corner. The waterfront opened up in front of her, a wide expanse of concrete, benches, a few scattered trees. And standing near the edge, facing the water, was Ryan Cole. He wasn't hiding, wasn't trying to blend in. He was just standing there, the bag at his feet, hands in his pockets, waiting. Claire stopped running, stood 50 feet away. Her hand moved toward the gun at her back. Renee's voice came through the radio. "I'm 20 feet behind you. Say the word and I move in." Claire didn't respond. She walked forward slowly, deliberately. Ryan heard her footsteps and turned. He looked different, thinner. His face was gaunt, eyes sunken. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days, or eaten, or cared about anything except the moment in front of him. "You came," he said. "You knew I would." "Yeah." He glanced at the buildings around them. "You brought friends too. Smart." "What's in the bag, Ryan?" "Does it matter?" "It does if you want to walk away from this." Ryan laughed. It was a hollow sound. "Walk away. That's funny. Where exactly am I walking to? I've got no job, no money, no future. My wife left me. My friends won't return my calls. I'm a ghost, Claire. You made sure of that. I didn't make you grab me. I didn't make you arrest me. You did that. Because I was doing my job. No. You were making an assumption, and you never questioned it. You just decided I was the problem and acted accordingly." Ryan's jaw tightened. "So this is justice? Destroying my life? This is accountability. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing." Claire took another step forward. "What do you want, Ryan? You got me here. You got your moment. So what now?" Ryan reached for the bag. Every operative on the team tensed, fingers on triggers, eyes on targets. Claire raised a hand. "Wait!" Ryan pulled out a gun, not pointed at Claire, pointed at his own head. The world stopped. Claire's breath caught. "Ryan, this is how it ends," he said quietly. "I put a bullet in my head, right here, in front of you, on camera." He gestured toward the buildings. "Because I know you've got people recording this, and when I'm dead, everyone's going to ask why. And the answer is you. You destroyed me. You took everything. And this," he tapped the gun against his temple, "this is your legacy. That's not going to work. It doesn't have to work. It just has to happen." Claire stepped closer, slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "You think killing yourself makes you the victim? It doesn't. It just makes you a coward." Ryan's hand shook. "I'm not a coward." "Then put the gun down. Face what you did. Take responsibility. Be a man instead of a martyr." "Responsibility?" Ryan's voice cracked. "I've lost everything. What more do you want from me? I want you to admit you were wrong." Claire stopped 10 feet away. "I want you to say it, out loud, that you made a mistake, that you arrested me because you assumed I didn't belong, that you grabbed me because you thought you could, that everything that happened after that was your fault, not mine, yours." Ryan stared at her. The gun was still pressed against his head. His finger was on the trigger. "And if I do, if I admit it, what changes?" "Nothing and everything. Nothing changes what you did, but everything changes about what happens next." "Which is what?" "You get help. You get therapy. You figure out how to live with what you've done. And maybe, you find a way to be a better person than you were the day you walked into that cafe." Ryan's eyes were wet. "I can't live with this." "Yes, you can. You just don't want to." "What's the difference?" "The difference is choice. You chose to arrest me. You chose to escalate. You chose to stalk me instead of dealing with your consequences. And now you're choosing this." Claire gestured at the gun. "But you don't have to. You can choose something else." Ryan's hand dropped slightly, just an inch, but it was enough. "Like what?" "Like putting the gun down, like turning around, like walking away and trying to figure out who you are when you're not blaming me for your failures." For a long moment, Ryan didn't move. The morning light was getting brighter. A few early risers had appeared on the waterfront, stopped at a distance, sensing something wrong. Claire could hear sirens in the distance. Someone had called the police. Time was running out. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Ryan said finally. His voice was barely audible. I just wanted you to know what it felt like, to lose everything. I do know. I lost my reputation that day in the cafe. I lost my sense of safety. I lost my trust in the system I'd served. The difference is, I didn't make it anyone else's problem. Because you're stronger than me. No, because I had people who reminded me I was worth more than my worst moment. You can have that too, but you have to choose it. Ryan looked at the gun in his hand. Then at Claire. Then at the ground. His shoulders started shaking, not from cold, from the weight of everything he'd been carrying. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know." Slowly, Ryan lowered the gun. His hand was shaking so badly he almost dropped it. Claire stepped forward, held out her hand. "Give it to me." Ryan looked at her. At the woman he'd tried to destroy. The woman who was standing in front of him, offering him a way out. "Why?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Why would you do this?" "Because I've been where you are, not the same place, but close enough. And someone gave me a choice. So I'm giving you one." Ryan handed her the gun. She took it, checked the chamber, removed the magazine, and set both on the ground behind her. Then she stepped back. "Lang, he's unarmed. Move in." Renee appeared from the left. Jackson from the right. 2 more operatives from behind. They surrounded Ryan, cuffed him, read him his rights. He didn't resist, didn't fight, just stood there, head down, as they led him away toward the approaching police cars. Lang walked up beside Claire. "That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the stupidest. Maybe both. You could have gotten yourself killed." "But I didn't." Lang looked at her. "You know he's going to jail, right? Stalking, harassment, weapons charges, he's done." "I know." "And you're okay with that?" Claire watched as Ryan was loaded into a police car. The man who'd tried to ruin her life, now in cuffs, now facing consequences he couldn't escape. "Yeah, I'm okay with it." But as the police car drove away, Claire felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not relief, just exhaustion, deep, bone-tired exhaustion. She'd won, she'd survived. She'd faced down her nightmare and walked away. But the cost was starting to hit her. All the sleepless nights, all the fear, all the times she'd looked over her shoulder or jumped at a phone notification. It had taken something from her, and getting it back wasn't going to be as simple as watching Ryan get arrested. Lang seemed to sense it. "Come on, let's get you out of here before the media shows up." They walked back to the van. Claire climbed in, pulled off her jacket, and sat in silence as Lang drove away from the waterfront. Her phone was already buzzing. Marcus. Garrison. Numbers she didn't recognize. She turned it off and stared out the window at Stonebridge City, waking up. People heading to work. Getting coffee. Living normal lives. She wondered if she'd ever feel normal again. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My place. You can crash there for a few hours. Get some actual sleep." "I don't think I can sleep." "Then you can sit there and not sleep. But you're not going back to your apartment. Not yet." They drove in silence for another 10 minutes. Then Lang said, "You did good back there. Better than good. You saved his life." "I didn't do it for him." "I know. You did it so you could live with yourself. That's the difference between you and him." Claire didn't respond. She was thinking about Ryan's face when he'd pointed the gun at his head. The desperation, the emptiness, the realization that he'd destroyed his own life and had no one left to blame. Part of her felt sorry for him. Part of her didn't. Mostly, she just felt tired. Lang's apartment was in a high-rise downtown. Secure building, doorman. The kind of place where people paid extra for privacy. He led her upstairs, showed her to the guest room, and left her alone. Claire sat on the edge of the bed, still in her running clothes, and stared at the wall. Her hands were shaking, delayed adrenaline dump. She'd felt it before, after particularly intense calls in the field, the body catching up to what the mind had already processed. She lay back, closed her eyes, and for the first time in months, she slept without dreaming. When she woke up, it was afternoon. The sun was streaming through the windows. Her phone was still off. She walked out to the living room and found Lang on his laptop. He looked up. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck." That's normal. You want food? Maybe. He ordered takeout. They ate in silence, watching the news on mute. Sure enough, footage of the waterfront was playing on every channel. Shaky phone videos from bystanders, a shot of Ryan being led away in cuffs, a still frame of Claire standing alone on the pier. The headline read, "Veteran talks down stalker in dramatic confrontation." "It's going to be everywhere," Lang said. "I know." "You're going to be famous, again." "I don't want to be famous." Too late. Claire's phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on without thinking. A text from Marcus. "Call me when you can. We need to talk." She called. He answered immediately. "Claire? How are you?" "Tired?" "I bet. Listen, I've been fielding calls all morning. News outlets, publishers, production companies. Everyone wants your story. I don't want to give it to them." "I know, but Claire, this is an opportunity. You could control the narrative. Make sure people understand what really happened." "People already understand. The video's out there. They can watch it themselves. It's not the same as hearing it from you." "Marcus, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I don't want to be the face of this. I just want to move on." There was a pause. Then Marcus said, "All right, I'll tell them you're not interested. But Claire, at some point you might want to tell your story. On your terms, when you're ready." "Maybe, but not now." She hung up, looked at Lang. "How long until this dies down?" "Depends. Could be a few days, could be a few weeks. You're not the first viral story. You won't be the last. Eventually, something else will happen and people will move on. And until then, you stay off social media. You don't answer calls from numbers you don't recognize, and you let me handle anyone who shows up asking questions." "What about work?" Lang leaned back. "That embassy contract in Nairobi? It's still on the table, but I pushed the start date back a month. Figured you might need some time." "I don't need time. I need to work." "Claire, I'm serious. Sitting around is just going to make this worse. I need to be doing something that matters." Lang studied her. "You sure?" "Positive." "All right, but we're taking it slow. No high-risk assignments for a while. You ease back in. Deal?" "Deal." The next few days were strange. Claire stayed at Lang's apartment, avoiding her own place, avoiding the reporters who'd tracked down her address. She trained at the facility, ran scenarios, kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. But at night, alone in the guest room, the weight of everything would settle over her like a blanket. She'd think about Ryan, about the cafe, about every moment that had led her to this point, and she'd wonder if it was really over, or if this was just another beginning. On the fourth day, Garrison called. "Claire, I wanted to give you an update. Ryan Cole was arraigned this morning. He pled guilty to all charges: stalking, harassment, weapons violations, violating the restraining order. The DA's recommending 24 months in prison, 5 years probation, mandatory psychiatric evaluation. When's sentencing?" 3 weeks, but it's a done deal. His lawyer's not fighting it." "What about Jennifer, his wife?" "She filed for divorce. She's moving to another state. Wants nothing to do with him." Claire was quiet for a moment. "Is he getting help? Real help?" "The court's mandating it. Whether it sticks is up to him." "Yeah." Garrison paused. "Claire, I know this has been hell, but you did everything right. You stayed calm. You didn't escalate. You gave him a chance to surrender. That's more than most people would have done." "Doesn't feel like enough." "It never does. But it's what we've got." After he hung up, Claire sat on the couch and stared at nothing. She thought about Ryan sitting in a cell, facing years of his life gone, facing the reality that he'd done this to himself. She thought about Jennifer, packing up her life, starting over somewhere new, carrying the weight of a marriage that had ended in handcuffs and headlines. And she thought about herself, still here, still fighting, still trying to figure out what came next. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ellen Frost. "I heard what happened. I'm glad you're okay. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Claire stared at the message. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Ellen had failed her when it mattered. But another part, the part that was tired of carrying anger, wanted to believe that people could learn, that mistakes could be acknowledged, that change was possible. She typed back, "Thanks. I appreciate it." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. 2 weeks later, Claire was cleared to return to active assignments. Lang had a domestic contract lined up, protective detail for a tech executive attending a conference in Boston. Low risk, high visibility. The kind of job that would ease her back into the rhythm without throwing her into the deep end. The night before she left, she went back to her apartment for the first time since Ryan's arrest. The locks had been changed. New cameras installed. The place looked the same but felt different, cleaner, emptier, like the ghost of what had happened had been exorcised. She packed a bag, checked her gear, made sure everything was in order. And as she was about to leave, she noticed something on her kitchen table. An envelope. Her name written on it in handwriting she didn't recognize. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A letter. Claire, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to care. But I needed to write it anyway. I'm sorry. For everything. For grabbing you. For arresting you. For stalking you. For making you feel unsafe in your own life. There's no excuse for what I did. No justification. I was angry, and I blamed you instead of looking at myself. You could have let me pull that trigger. You could have walked away and let me become another statistic. But you didn't. You gave me a choice. And because of that, I'm still here, still breathing, still trying to figure out how to live with what I've done. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm getting help, real help. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure I never hurt anyone the way I hurt you. Thank you for not giving up on me when I'd already given up on myself. Ryan. Claire read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. She didn't know if she believed him, didn't know if he'd actually change, or if this was just words on paper. But she knew one thing: his redemption wasn't her responsibility. Her responsibility was to herself, to keep moving forward, to keep building the life she deserved. She left the envelope on the table and walked out of the apartment for the last time. The Boston assignment went smoothly. Claire fell back into the rhythm of the work. Early mornings, long days, constant vigilance. The executive was pleasant enough, didn't ask intrusive questions, didn't recognize her from the news, just treated her like a professional doing her job. It was exactly what she needed. On the last day of the assignment, Lang called. How'd it go? Good. No issues. You ready for something bigger? Depends on what it is. Nairobi, embassy security, 6 months, same contract we talked about before. They're still asking for you specifically. Claire looked out the hotel window at Boston's skyline. Thought about Stonebridge, about the apartment she'd never go back to, about the life she'd left behind. When do we leave? 2 weeks. I'll be ready. But before she could leave for Kenya, there was one more thing she had to do. She drove back to Stonebridge on a Tuesday morning, not to her apartment, not to Lang's office, to Riverbank General Hospital. She walked through the main entrance, past the ER where she'd worked for 6 years, past the nurses' station where she'd logged countless shifts. No one recognized her. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. She took the elevator to the 5th floor. Administrative offices. Ellen Frost's door was open. Claire knocked. Ellen looked up from her desk, and her expression shifted from surprise to something that might have been relief. Claire, come in. Claire stepped inside, closed the door. I'm leaving the country for a while. Thought I should tell you in person. Where are you going? Kenya. Embassy security work. Ellen nodded slowly. That sounds, intense. It is. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ellen said, I'm glad you came. I've been wanting to apologize, really apologize. Not the corporate version, the real one. Okay? I failed you. When you needed support, I worried about the hospital's reputation instead. That was wrong. And I'm sorry. Claire looked at her, at the woman who'd been her boss for 6 years, who'd signed off on her shifts and her raises and her performance reviews, who'd never once asked if she was okay until it was too late. I appreciate that. Is there anything I can do? Anything that would make this right? Claire thought about it. Then she said, hire better, train better. And the next time one of your nurses gets arrested for sitting in a cafe, stand with them, publicly, immediately. Don't wait for the lawyers to tell you it's safe. Ellen's eyes were wet. I will. I promise. Claire stood. That's all I needed to hear. She walked out of the office, out of the hospital, and back to her car. She didn't feel vindicated. She didn't feel triumphant. She just felt lighter, like she'd put down a weight she'd been carrying for too long. 2 weeks later, Claire boarded a plane to Nairobi. The team was already assembled. Renee, Jackson, and 3 new operatives she'd be working with for the next 6 months. They reviewed the briefing during the flight: embassy security, diplomatic protection, medical response for high-risk environments. It was everything she'd trained for, everything she was good at. When they landed, the heat hit her like a wave, different from Jakarta. Drier, harsher, the kind of heat that made you move slower, think clearer. They drove through the city in an armored convoy, past markets and traffic and people going about their lives. Claire watched it all through the window, taking it in, filing it away. The embassy compound was massive, high walls, guard towers, the kind of place built to withstand anything. Inside, they were briefed by the security chief, assigned quarters given their schedules. Claire's role was clear: medical response, trauma care, emergency protocols. If something went wrong, and in places like this something always went wrong, she'd be the difference between life and death. That night she stood on the roof of her quarters, looking out over the city. Lights stretched to the horizon. The air was cool now, almost pleasant. Somewhere out there, people were living their lives, working, eating, laughing, surviving, just like she was. Her phone buzzed, a text from Lang. "How's it feel to be back in the field?" She typed back, "Like I never left. Good. Stay sharp. Stay safe. Always." She put the phone away and stood there for a while longer, breathing in the night air, feeling the weight of everything she'd been through settle into something manageable. She'd been arrested, humiliated, stalked, threatened, and she'd survived all of it. Not just survived, thrived. Because that was the thing about being underestimated, about being dismissed, about being told you didn't belong. It didn't break you. It forged you. And Claire Whitaker, combat medic, trauma specialist, survivor, was done being broken. The months in Nairobi passed in a rhythm. Early mornings, security briefings, medical drills. She treated everything from minor injuries to serious trauma. A diplomat who collapsed from heat exhaustion. A local staff member who'd been in a car accident. An embassy employee who had a heart attack during a high-stress meeting. Claire handled each case with the same calm competence she'd honed over years in the field. The team respected her, not because of the viral videos or the headlines, because she was good at her job, because when things went wrong, she didn't panic. She acted, and people lived because of it. 3 months in, there was an incident. A protest outside the embassy turned violent, rocks thrown, tear gas deployed. One of the guards took a blow to the head. Claire was there within seconds, assessing the injury, stabilizing his neck, calling for transport. He survived with a concussion and a story he'd tell for years. Afterward, the security chief pulled her aside. "That was textbook. Where'd you learn to move like that?" "Combat zones. 7 years." "It shows." That night, Renee found her in the common area. "You okay?" "Yeah, just decompressing." "You were impressive today, calm under fire." "That's the job." Renee sat down beside her. "I've worked with a lot of medics. Most of them are good, some are great. You're different." "How?" "You don't just treat the injury. You treat the person. You make them feel like they're going to be okay, even when you're not sure they will be. That's rare." Claire didn't know what to say. "Thanks. I mean it. Whatever you've been through, whatever brought you here, it made you better at this. Don't forget that." After Renee left, Claire sat alone in the quiet. She thought about the cafe, about Ryan, about every moment that had led her to this room, in this city, on this continent. And she realized something important. She wouldn't change it. Not the arrest, not the lawsuit, not the stalking, because all of it had brought her here, to a place where she mattered, where her skills were valued, where she was exactly who she needed to be. 6 months after arriving in Nairobi, Claire's contract ended. The embassy threw a small ceremony, presented her with a commendation, thanked her for her service. She shook hands, accepted the recognition, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: pride. Not the defensive kind, the kind that comes from proving people wrong, the quiet kind, the kind that comes from knowing you did good work and did it well. On the flight back to Stonebridge, Lang sat beside her. "What's next?" "I don't know yet. You've got options. More contracts coming in, people asking for you by name. You could work steady for the next 5 years if you wanted." "Maybe." Or you could take some time. Figure out what you actually want instead of just reacting to what's in front of you. Claire looked at him. When did you get so wise? I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of people burn out because they didn't know when to slow down. I'm not burning out. Not yet. But you've been running since the day you got arrested. At some point, you have to stop running and start living. Claire didn't answer. She wasn't sure she knew how to do that anymore. When she landed in Stonebridge, the city looked different, smaller, less important. She took a cab to a hotel downtown, not the one Lang had put her in before. A different one, nicer, the kind of place where people didn't ask questions. She checked in, went up to her room, and stood at the window looking out at the skyline. Her phone rang. Marcus. Welcome back. How was Kenya? Good. Productive. I'm glad. Listen, I've got some news. The city wants to hold a ceremony, officially recognize you for de-escalating the situation with Ryan Cole. Mayor's office is pushing for it. I don't want a ceremony. I figured you'd say that. But Claire, this isn't about them. It's about you. About making sure the record is clear. You're not just the woman who got arrested. You're the woman who faced down her stalker and saved his life. That matters. To who? To everyone who's ever been dismissed. Everyone who's ever been told they don't belong. Everyone who's watching your story and wondering if they can survive their own. Claire sat down on the bed. When is it? Next month. You don't have to decide now. Just think about it. After he hung up, Claire lay back and stared at the ceiling. A ceremony. Recognition. Validation. A year ago, she would have killed for that. Now? She wasn't sure it mattered. She'd already proven what she needed to prove. To herself. And that was enough. But over the next few weeks, as she settled back into Stonebridge, something shifted. She started getting messages. Not from reporters or producers. From regular people. Nurses who'd faced discrimination. Veterans who'd struggled to transition to civilian life. Women who'd been harassed and didn't know how to fight back. They all said the same thing. Your story gave me hope. One message in particular stuck with her. It was from a young woman, mid-20s, who'd been assaulted by a coworker and fired when she reported it. I was ready to give up, she wrote. But then I saw you on the pier talking that man down, refusing to let him make you the villain. And I realized I didn't have to give up either. I hired a lawyer. I'm fighting back. Thank you for showing me it's possible. Claire read the message 3 times. Then she called Marcus. The ceremony. I'll do it. You sure? Yeah, but on one condition. I want to speak. And I want to say what I want to say. No script, no approval, just me. Deal. The ceremony was held in the same city council chambers where the apology had happened. But this time, the energy was different. The room was packed, not just with officials and reporters, but with regular people. Nurses from Riverbank General, veterans from local organizations, community members who'd followed her story. They filled every seat, lined the walls, stood in the back. Mayor Draven stood at the podium. Today we recognize someone who exemplifies courage, resilience, and grace under pressure. Claire Whitaker faced injustice, and instead of responding with bitterness, she responded with strength. Please join me in honoring her. The applause was thunderous. Claire walked to the podium, feeling every eye in the room on her. She didn't have notes, didn't have a prepared speech, she just had the truth. A year ago, I was arrested for sitting in a cafe, she began. Her voice was steady, clear. I was handcuffed, dragged out, and humiliated in front of dozens of people. And for a while, I thought that moment defined me, that I'd always be the woman in that video, the victim, the person things happened to. She paused. But I was wrong. That moment didn't define me. How I responded to it did. I could have walked away, could have taken the settlement and disappeared. But I didn't. I fought back. I held people accountable. And I built a life that proved I was more than the worst thing anyone ever did to me. The room was silent. I'm not here to tell you I'm special. I'm not. I'm just someone who refused to let other people's assumptions become my reality. And if you're watching this, if you're someone who's been dismissed or underestimated or told you don't belong, I want you to know something. You're not alone, and you're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. She stepped back from the podium. The applause started slowly, then built into something overwhelming. People stood, clapped. Some were crying. Claire looked out at the crowd and felt something she hadn't expected. Connection. These people weren't here because she was famous. They were here because she'd fought and won and shown them it was possible. After the ceremony, Claire was surrounded by people wanting to talk, to shake her hand, to thank her. She stayed for an hour, listening to their stories, offering what encouragement she could. Then she slipped out a side exit and found Lang waiting by his car. That was powerful, he said. It needed to be said. So what now? You ready to take on the world? Claire smiled. I think I've been doing that for a while. Fair point, but seriously, what's next? She thought about it. About Kenya and Jakarta and Boston and every assignment in between. About the work she loved and the life she'd built. About the woman she'd become and the woman she was still becoming. I think I'm ready to stop running and start choosing. Choosing what? Everything. 6 months later, Claire stood in front of a new building. It was modest, brick, tucked into a quiet neighborhood on the east side of Stonebridge. The sign above the door read, Whitaker Veteran Services, Medical Training and Support. It had taken most of her settlement money to make it happen, but it was hers. A place where veterans could get medical training, job placement assistance, mental health support. A place that understood what it meant to serve and what it cost when you stopped. A place that didn't wait for people to ask for help. It offered it. Lang stood beside her. You really think this is going to work? I know it is. What makes you so sure? Because I needed this a year ago, and it didn't exist, so I'm making sure it exists now. Inside, the space was clean, functional, ready. Exam rooms, training spaces, offices for counselors and job placement specialists. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid, and it was needed. The first class started the following week. 15 veterans, all transitioning out of service, all looking for purpose. Claire taught them trauma care, emergency response, crisis management. The same skills she'd learned in combat zones and refined in the field. And she watched them transform. Watched them go from uncertain to confident, from lost to focused, from invisible to essential. One student, a woman named Sarah, who'd served 2 tours in the Middle East, approached her after class. I just wanted to say thank you for this, for believing we could do this work. You can do this work. You've been doing harder work for years. I know, but no one else seemed to think so. Claire looked at her. Then they weren't paying attention. That night, Claire sat in her office, looking at the roster for next month's class. 23 students, then 30, then 40. The demand was overwhelming, the need was real, and she was meeting it. Her phone rang, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Whitaker? A man's voice. Hesitant. Yes? My name is Thomas Reeves. I'm calling from the State Department. We've been following your work, the training center, the veteran support programs. It's impressive. Thank you. We'd like to talk to you about a consulting role, developing training protocols for embassy medical personnel, high-risk environments, the kind of work you're already doing, but on a larger scale. Claire leaned back. I'm listening. They talked for an hour. By the end of the call, she'd agreed to a 6-month consulting contract. Not full-time, not exclusive, just enough to expand her reach without losing the center she'd built. When she hung up, she sat in the quiet for a long time. Thought about the cafe, about Ryan, about every moment that had brought her to this desk in this office, in this life she'd created from wreckage. And she realized something important. She'd won, not because she'd beaten Ryan Cole, not because she'd gotten an apology or a settlement or recognition. She'd won because she'd refused to let the worst thing that ever happened to her become the only thing. She'd taken the humiliation, the fear, the anger, and she'd turned it into purpose. A year ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was building something that would outlast her. A year ago, she'd been underestimated. Now she was proving exactly what she was capable of. A year ago, she'd been fighting for recognition. Now she was creating it for others. And that, more than any apology, more than any settlement, more than any headline, was what winning actually looked like. Claire stood up, turned off the lights, and locked the door behind her. Tomorrow, she'd train more veterans. Next week, she'd consult with the State Department. Next month, she'd expand the center to accommodate the growing demand. But tonight, she'd go home to her new apartment, the one she'd chosen, in the neighborhood she wanted, with the life she'd built. And she'd sleep. Not because she'd beaten her demons, but because she'd learned to live with them. to integrate them into who she was instead of letting them define her. She'd learned that being underestimated wasn't a weakness. It was armor, because people who dismissed you never saw you coming. She'd learned that justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was quiet, patient, inevitable. And she'd learned that the most powerful thing you could do after someone tried to destroy you wasn't to destroy them back. It was to build something so undeniably valuable that their opinion of you became irrelevant. Claire Whitaker walked to her car under the streetlights of Stonebridge City, the same city that had arrested her, humiliated her, tried to break her. But she was still here, still standing, still building, and she always would be, because that's what survivors do. They survive, they adapt, they overcome, and then they make damn sure no one else has to fight as hard as they did.